Hey, good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Table Enabled as we continue through Shulchan Aruch Harachayim. Today I'm going to have to do two Simonim because yesterday I didn't have a chance to do it. We're doing Kuf Sadi Gimel and Kuf Sadi Dal. Kuf Sadi Gimel 193. Mitzarf and the Zimonim Lav. We're talking about Birkas Hamazon and more specifically the Zimun before Birkas Hamazon. Start with Aleph. Shnayim Sha'achlu Achal Bisha Birkas Hamotzi Poter Echad Eschavero. Right, when you sit down, Shabbos meal, right? One person usually, not only allowed to be a motzi, the preferred way if you're eating together is one person to make a motzi and exempt his friend. Mitzvah l'chalik, shivara kol echad berachas mazon la'atzma. It's only two people eating together. Each one should bench separately. It's only talking about they both know berachas hamazon. Aval echad yodea v'hasheni eno yodea, v'varach yodea v'yotzi yodea. It may be in lashon hakodesh, ela she'eno yodea levarach. According to Tosos and the Rosh and Ben Yonah and the Mordechai, a lot of Rishonim. The only time you can motzi your friend, I know it. He doesn't know. He doesn't say the words. Because I'm a bencher, right? I have the bencher, but he understands lashon hakodesh. So then I can be motzi him. We have to exactly here pay attention to every single word, which is an interesting halacha because shomei ka'one usually means even if you don't understand, but some reason over here it means you have to understand. The Ramas is also not only they have to give up on it to be yotze, he has to give on it to be motziyim. Now, even though this is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah notes there's a lot of poskim that hold that's not true. That even if you don't understand the word, as long as it's lashon hakodesh, and this is the generally accepted halacha, that if it's in Hebrew, you could be motzi your friend in any bracha or any type of tefillah, even if they don't understand the words, because lashon hakodesh is understood by Hashem. It's always universally understood in halacha. However, if you're doing it in a different lashon, we said Birkas Hamazon could be in a different language, then if you want to be yotze with someone else, you have to understand the language. Aval me'eno meivin any yotze b'shmiya. This is the Shulchan Aruch. So if you don't understand, you're not yotze. Aval shlosha shachlu. Now we're getting to Zimun. If three people ate together, we'll talk about what it means to be together. Really, we're going to see either you have to start the meal together or end the meal together, or both. Einam rishayim l'chalik. They can't separate. They have to do a zimun, meaning, and classically, we're going to learn exactly how it's done. Nowadays, everyone really says Birkas Hamazon by themselves, but really zimun was one person is starting the zimun, and he is being moti them in Birkas Hamazon. The shnayim she'achlu mitzvah she'achzor achar shlishi start the zimun. If you only have two people, even though you don't have to find a third person, if it's easy in that house to find a third person, then you should. It's a mitzvah mit amufkar. The Gemara says you try to find it. V'kein arba. Yeah, 4 or 5. Again, they have to bench together. You can't separate. They're all obligated in zimun by either starting their meal together or ending the meal together. Now, it's clear from the Boskim it's only a bread meal. When it comes to even shivas haminim or mizonos, even though there are a lot of Boskim that say there is a zimun for these things, nonetheless we paskin there's no zimun for these things. Only bread. Shisha shenechlakim, meaning to be yotze in alamicha. Shisha nechlakim, kevan sheishar zimun. If you have 6 people in together, so they can separate into 2 groups of 3. Each of them will have zimun. It's the same zimun, 3 or 6 people. Ad asara, you can separate until you have 10. Meaning, let's say you have 9 people. If you have one group of 4, one group of 5. You have 3 groups of 3. It's okay. However, once you have 10 people, then you already get to say Nevarech Elkeinu, right? So when you're mentioning Hashem's name, so that added Maila, that added important thing that you get to say Hashem is not limited for going. You're not allowed to split up. So you have 10 people. You can't split up to 5 and 5, even if it's convenient. Nonetheless, you have to bench together. Unless you have 20 people. Once you have 20 people, you can split 10 and 10. If they want. Again, 6 people, you don't have to split up. You could. It's a rishus. If they want to, they can split up. The best thing to do, right, if it's possible, you don't have to be crazy about it, but if you have 10 people, it's great because they have Shem Hashem. We'll see it's Darash Kedusha, right? Let's say a wedding meal. This is commonly happens, right? You're sitting so far away from the head table, right? So you all started the meal together. You ended the meal together. You didn't start the meal together because the person who's benching is usually a chassan or someone at the head of the dais. They came in later. They started the meal after you. but you're ending your meal together, so technically you're chayiv and zimun together. Let's say 100, 200, 300 people. However, you're not supposed to, divide into groups. So what are your options? You can't be yotze with the mezamin because you're not going to be able to hear the zimun. He's so far away. He doesn't have a microphone. Whether a microphone works or not is a subject of debate. But let's say they don't have a microphone. You can't hear it from him. And to separate into groups of 10 people, which would be not bad. Let's say you have 300 people. It's not better 300 people than 10 people necessarily. 10 people have Skaras Hashem. Nonetheless, you don't want to do that, but then you have to be pretty loud because you have 10 people have to hear it. Vishma Balabayas v'yakbid alayim. The Balabayas, the father of the chassan who's paying for this wedding, is getting angry at you. Right? Bench with us, not by yourself. You can divide into groups of 3, even though you're giving up saying Shem Hashem, because this is really the only way of doing it. Otherwise, they're not really being able to use but you have to hear the Varach Shachal Mishalo. Now, I guess if they have a microphone, they can rely on that. A microphone is really hearing it. It might depend on what type of microphone we're talking about, right? Is it one of those dynamic microphones, which will make your sound louder? So I'd say is Shomeka own, as opposed to the ones they use for those podcasts, which are, there's two different types of microphones. The dynamic type of microphone, which, people like singers use or an MC would use at a live concert. And then you have, these podcast type of microphones, which is, or they use in the studios, right? The studio cardio, I think microphone is called. I'm not sure exactly the name, but it's a I'm wrong about that, but it's a different name. It's something just to hear the fine nuances in your voice. That's why I use in a studio or use in a podcast where the person's not making a lot of noise. So it's a different type of projection over there. Something like that. I don't know if that's something that maybe there's difference. Maybe there's no difference. I don't know. I'm just speculating over here, but it depends what. But generally, we assume a microphone is probably like hearing it, because a microphone is hearing it. You are hearing the person's voice. So that totally and here Mavar, the best thing to do is divide into groups of 3. Even if they didn't get together at the beginning to eat together, 3 people. 2 people sat down at the lunch table. A third guy came over and joined them. One person sat down to eat a bread meal. And then 2 people came next to him. Since they ended their meal together. Meaning, what does it mean they end their meal together? They want to bench at the same time. Right? So they're benching together. So the idea of, since they finished their meal together, so therefore, just like at the beginning of the meal, right? When you have a bread meal, one person's motzi, the other person in the bracha. Also at the end of the meal, if you're finishing your meal together, zimlin. If one person, they have 2 people sitting together at lunch table, a third person just comes by and says hello and schmoozes them a little bit, has a snack over there, he's not even sitting down with them. Even if he is sitting down, he's not establishing a space over there. Unless he's the waiter. If he's a waiter, he's not going to sit down. So a waiter could join together with 2 other people, because that's his way of being koveya, is to go back and forth into the kitchen. He said before, technically, if you have 6, you can go into 3. Or even if you have like 2 people that are koveya, one person's not koveya with you, really, you could ask him, right, to sit down and join you. Because it's better to do zimun than not to do zimun. Rabbi Madrash Melech. Sorry, let's go back. I think he means. Well, he says both cases. 3 people ate. They weren't really stationary. They were moving around a lot. It's better to end your meal together, to establish, let's bench together, to say we're going to bench together. And that's good enough of a kfiyas, right? Saying you're going to bench together, right? That's good enough. Or you have 6 people, you can go into 2 groups of 3, or 20 people, you have 2 groups of 10. It's better, Rav Madrash Melech, Technically, it's better to have 20 people in two groups of 10. Gimel, Amru Nochal. This is not from a Gemara. Rabbi Yonah says this. If they were riding together, say in cars or in the ancient days on camels, and starfit. Even though everyone's eating from his own roll and they don't get off their animals, they are mistari for zimun. Since they stopped in one place. Let's say you're on a bus or something like that, and you have a break, to go to the bathroom, and you sit down, you have a meal. But if they're on their way and they're journeying together and they're eating while they're walking, that's not a kfiyas. You have a makom. This is similar to a bracha we learned about being moti someone else in their bracha, right? The bracha rishona, right? If you designate a place, let's eat here, and you do eat there, then one person can moti the other person. Otherwise, no. Let's say they didn't designate a place, but they stopped and they were eating in one field, but they didn't designate this is our place to eat. They're eating from one loaf of bread at the same time. And since they didn't say this is our place to eat, right? And they're eating in a field, so that's not joining together. If you eat in a dining room, yes. Field, no. The Ramah says if you're in a non-Jewish house, some people work in non-Jewish firms, a non-Jewish office. You have a dinner, an office dinner or something like that, and you have a couple of Jews, so in a non-Jewish restaurant or something like that. So you shouldn't make a zima, even though there's three Jews. And really, at Tam, Mishum Delo Yuchlu L'Kbo Atzma Beis Gechavim Mishum Yiras Gechavim Hel Gilu Achlu Below Keva. They're afraid of Avodah Zarah, of the people, the Christians over there. Yeah, and it's like you can't eat bekvias. The whole point of zimun is that you establish a place. You're not establishing a place because you're fearful to be among non-Jews. Right? You're not supposed to say Rachman Yivarach Balabais. You're not going to bless a non-Jew, right? And to leave it out, he'll realize because he knows the text of benching. So it's going to lead to problems. Therefore, even when they sat down, maybe they sat down in a fine restaurant and they got their food from Lamare, right, delivered to them, nonetheless, you shouldn't change the minhag. Even if these reasons didn't apply, there was no actual avodah zarah there, or the person has no idea, the balabayas, the head of the law firm, has no idea about benching, harachaman, what he's supposed to say. Since this is the minhag, when you're in a non-Jewish restaurant, a non-Jewish house, that you don't make a zima, and that's the minhag, and people, even if they are koveya, they're not really koveya. Daled. The people sat down to eat, right? Let's say a Shabbos. One is motzi the other person. This is, I think, the halacha. He's motzi the other person in the berachas hamotzi. Even they have their own loaves of bread, their own challah. They didn't even get kazayas of bread. They can't separate over here. You have to wait. Meaning, this is an interesting halacha. You have to either bench together. You could end. We'll see. You could end benching early. You can leave early. You can say, "Let's do a zima." One person can say to two people, "Let's do a zima," but you have to say together for because you started together. Now, what does it mean to start together? Start together sounds like what I think it means is that one person was motzi the other person in the bracha of hamotzi. But there are other posts. I want to talk about this and even to lean on what I heard from Rosh Hashiva, Rav Yaakov Friedman, and what I saw an actual account of Rav Yaakov Friedman being machmir. I think more than this halacha requires. We'll talk about that in to lean on. Hey, three people came from three different groups. There were three groups of three people. If you can do your math, that's 9 people. And one of them left from each group, and they came together. They didn't like the group they were a part of. They made their own clique. Nonetheless, they were chayiv in their own zimun. So, if in their place these 3 people left from 3 different groups. Now, if they left from the groups only had 2 people. So, let's say those groups somehow got another person came and joined them. So now they have 3 people. Go and shave siku, kol echa l'shnayim ad amru hazan. Um, Shuva enam yachol mazamer afilu achlo achgach v'gamru sudasa. Now, I don't know if this means that there were only two people left and they started bench Birkas Hamazon, or another person joined them and they did Zimun. The Be'er Halacha says the Chora Nera Duha Dinim Echad Mehen Hifsik L'Shnayim. I think in both cases it would be true. Meaning, let's say the groups that only had two left, they got a third person and did Zimun, or even if they realized there are only two people, so they bench by themselves, right? Even if these new three people that joined forces together, and they finished eating together, they still, because the Zimun that they came from, the Chi of Zimun starts when they started the meal together. They had three people together beginning the meal. The Zimun was over there. And then their Zimun was dismantled, was dissipated, when other people benched or they had a Zimun in their other, where they were coming from. If they didn't make a Zimun yet, they didn't make Beres HaMazon, these three people, since they finished their meal together, even if they didn't finish the meal together, since they came, this is the Chiddush, right? If they finished the meal together, of course, even if they weren't coming from three groups of three people. But here, they decide, one guy says, I'll do Birkas Hamazon, others together, no, I'm going to eat some more. They because they're Chayiv and Zimun, and now they're part of a group of three people, right? Even though they didn't start together, and they didn't finish together, they have to make a Zimun. Even if they didn't actually eat together, they ate separately. One person ate for 5 minutes, another person ate for 5 minutes. They took turns eating. There wasn't enough soup for everybody to eat at one time. They had to wait for the waiter to refill the soup. It doesn't make a difference. They come from a makom of chiyuv, so therefore they have to finish that chiyuv together. Vav shlosh chaburos shayu b'chol achas arba. Now, a different case. There were three groups. Each one had four. Now, three, again, the same idea. Three people left from each of these three groups, meaning one person from each group. And the three that were left made a zimun. So I guess in halacha, hey, we're talking about where there was only two people left, and they did Birkas Hamazon without doing a zimun. Here, it's the other case where they did zimun by themselves, so they lost zimun. If like the other case that I said, right? It was three groups of three. Three people left, one from each group. And then the other three groups, they each got another person who came and joined with them. So Parcha Zimun, they did Zimun, so therefore the Zimun that each of the three people who left was carrying is gone. Haga, Shalosh Chaburos, Sha'achlu B'chol Chabura Shlosh B'nei Adam, also L'chol Echad L'farei M'chol Chabura L'zam B'yachad. You can't do this. This is only talking about the Evet. If you had four people in each group, you could do it. But if you had three people, it's better not to do it. But if you did, but there's three people, you're not only being mafsid potentially for yourself, but also for the other two people. If each group had four, so then you could separate it and make your new group. So then you end up with four groups of three as opposed to three groups of four. Of course, it's better to do, if you have the choice, it's better four than three. The more people participating in the mitzvah is better. However, technically, you're halachically allowed to do that. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Ian to lean on, where I talk about the technicalities and really where this halacha comes into play. A lot of times, right, if you're eating a meal on Shabbos, people start together and usually they finish together. So really the halacha is either one. Either you started together or you didn't start together, you finished together. You made Birkas Hamazon together, you're chayiv in the zimun. Now, it's pretty clear ending the meal together is when you decide to bench together. Even one person finished 20 minutes ago, he's not eating. Another person continues eating, but then you decide to bench together. You say, share malos, you're benching together. That's considered a zimun. However, what about if you started together, but you didn't finish together, right? You have chayiv in a zimun in that case. What does it mean starting together? What does it mean exactly start together? I will tell you my opinion based on what it seems from the Shulchan Aruch saying, and I will tell you my life experience with this and what I saw from my Rosh Hashiva, Yaakov Friedman, about how he interpreted this halacha even to lean on coming up next.